Thanks for having me.
American Society of Plumbing Engineers?
Actually, it's a temp training company out of Raleigh, North Carolina, but yes, we've gotten that one quite a bit. I've been a contractor with them for quite a while and also run my own company. I'm Andy. Hi, nice to meet you all. But I also go by William, and I'll explain all of that in just a minute. I'm from right here in Charlotte. I've been involved in user groups here since like 2006, something like that. But I'm based out here in Charlotte, and I'm a Sharepoint guy. That's how I got my start. I started doing Sharepoint back in like 2010. I've been a trainer in Sharepoint ever since. I've traveled all over the country, seen companies big and small, worked with mom and pop all the way up to NASA and everywhere in between. Started out in Sharepoint, and I've since expanded into Office 365, Microsoft Teams, but also do project server as well. My main role is Enterprise Collaboration Specialist. So what does that mean? Well, I do training, I do consulting. I help organizations, big and small, understand the technology they have, how to implement it, how to drive successful adoption campaigns around it, and just grow their technical expertise and take advantage of all these amazing tools that Microsoft are currently making for us. I am an MVP, I've been MVP for going on 3 years now. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, and what that means is I get to go behind the curtain at Redmond. I get to talk with the product teams and the engineers, and I get some insider information, which is pretty cool. But I also get a lot of resources, and so it helps keep me on my toes, it helps keep me learning. One of my big philosophies growing up, and even to this day, is every day is an opportunity to learn something new. That's why I continue to participate in user groups. That's why I continue to do presentations. That's why I help lead the Charlotte area Sharepoint user group. Because I want to pay it forward. I also want to keep learning on my own. So being part of that ecosystem, I get to continue my education, and I try to pass that forward as much as I can. I do help run the Charlotte area Sharepoint user group. We meet the third Thursday of every month, so we're actually meeting here in this room in 2 days. I'll be back doing another presentation along with Corey Williams on modern Sharepoint. So if you want to learn more about Sharepoint, you want to see some of the things happening in Sharepoint online, come back Thursday, we've got another presentation going. I also help organize Sharepoint Saturday for Charlotte. I'll talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. As far as communication-wise, my email's right up there. You can email me if you have any questions or follow-up after today. Also, I see some of you have laptops with you. Some of you have some mobile devices. I like doing interactive presentations and demos. I don't want to do PowerPoint for the next 2 hours. So I get to set up the demo. If you want to participate and you want to get hands-on with Microsoft Teams, send me an email and just say in the subject line, Microsoft Teams. Just put that in there, and you send that to me. I will get you an invite into my Office 365 tenant. You'll be in a team with me, and we'll do the demo from there. So go ahead and send those through.
What do you have against UPS with the UPS skill tech?
I'm sorry?
What do you have against UPS with UPS skill tech?
It's actually upskill tech. Upskill your skill set. But yeah, that's my private company. I do contract with ASB. That's primarily training. But upskill tech, that's me. That's where I do my consulting and my one-off work from there. I'm on Twitter at Andy Huneycutt. So if you tweet, follow me there. And then on LinkedIn, I'm William. So my real name is William Andrew, but I go by Andy. You can call me any variation of William and Andrew and Andy. Pretty much anything in between I answer to. I blame my parents for that. I made sure that I didn't do that to my son. He has a simple name and he doesn't have to deal with all the variations. All right, kind of moving forward, just want to mention we are our CASA. We're going to be hosting Sharepoint Saturday on August 10th. We're going to be at UNCC, their Center City campus. It's that funky little building on the side, just like Legos. It's a free event. Anybody can attend. We opened up the call for speakers a couple weeks ago. We've already got a ton of good speakers coming in. And then we're going to open up registration here soon. We're getting ready to announce speakers and keynotes and push out the schedule. But it's a free event for anybody who wants to attend. And this year it's not just about Sharepoint. We're expanding a little bit in Office 365. So we're calling it Sharepoint Office 365 Saturday. The core focus is still very much SharePoint, but as SharePoint's evolved, it's starting to integrate more and more with Office 365, so our event's going to focus in on that as well. So you'll learn about SharePoint there, on-prem and in the cloud. You'll learn about Microsoft Teams. We'll have a whole track for that. Tools like Power Apps and Flow. We'll also have entry-level sessions all the way up to level 400 sessions for the experts and for some of the deep dives that are out there. Free event, anybody who wants to attend, let me know, I'll get you some information. You can also find our group, Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group, on Meetup. I know many of you are on Meetup. We're on Meetup as well. So if you have any questions about that, I'll stick around afterward. Feel free to ask. But I've been involved with this group, running the SharePoint Saturdays, going on 5 years now. Every year it's gotten bigger and bigger. Every year the attendance has grown, which is amazing. We have a lot of fun putting on that event, so I'm really looking forward to this year and what happens there. So just diving in a little bit more, you might have noticed I was a little bit of an Iron Man fan, and there's an explanation for that. I had a brief conversation about it just a few minutes ago. I don't know if I would call myself a fan so much as I would call myself a fanatic. When that movie came out in 2008 with Robert Downey Jr., directed by Jon Favreau, went in kind of didn't know what to expect at the time, kind of low expectations. Walked out, completely blew my mind. I thought that was one of the coolest comic book movies that they had done up to that point. I really like the interpretation of the movie overall. Really excited about Endgame, whenever that came out last year. I'm super excited, Endgame coming up next week, I'm sorry. Infinity War last year I was super excited about. Endgame I'm really stoked about. Spoiler free please, I'm going to be off social media for the next week or so until I get to see that. My wife and I, we just welcomed our first kid a little over a year and a half ago, our little baby ironmonger. I really wish that was my kid flying around, that'd be kind of cool. So we got our own little baby ironmonger running around the house now. I don't get a whole lot of sleep and I don't even play around with as many toys as I used to.
So do you do cosplay?
Not yet. Not yet.
Why not?
Because I build things. So the question up here was, do I do cosplay? No, not yet, because I build things. I build techie things. So some people are really excited about, dual monitors, triple monitors, giant wraparound screens and everything. I want a HUD. Give me a HUD and I'll be good to go. We're this close because SharePoint announced last year this thing called Sharepoint Spaces, and it actually uses a heads-up display. So I'm really interested to see where SharePoint Spaces ends up going in the future. But for me, some of the things that I thought were really cool about that movie was how they re-envisioned Jarvis. Jarvis in the movie was an artificial intelligence, but in the comics, it was a person. It was the Stark family butler, and he actually had the distinction of being the longest tenured Avenger, even longer than Captain America. Jarvis was there as part of the Avengers longer than anybody. They did a short-lived 2-season series, Agent Carter. They had a great actor playing Jarvis in that series, and that was part of the current MCU that we actually have. But I really liked what they did with Jarvis in that movie. I thought it was really clever. So they reimagined Jarvis, and it became an AI system. Now this is back, 2007, 2008. So when they had him doing the AI, I thought that was really cool. And Jarvis actually stood for something, just a rather very intelligent system. And I know this because I bought the extended edition DVD with 4 hours of footage. And then I found out about the extended edition Blu-ray with 10 hours of footage. And then I found out about the Art of Iron Man, the movie, which was a limited print book. Retailed for about $40, brand new. They sold out the initial publishing of it. And then you can find copies online for $300. My wife said no. And then I found a copy for $400 because the other one sold out. And she's like, I will divorce you. So a buddy of mine who actually works here in Charlotte, runs a comic shop, he found a couple in a warehouse. He gave me mine for cost and he sold the other one for $400 and made a pretty tiny profit. But that's how I learned what Jarvis stood for. And I thought that was really cool, the way that they re-envisioned Jarvis. They turned it into an AI. And at the time, I was starting to learn about building networks and starting to learn about server systems, and I was starting to learn SharePoint 2007. And learn about workflow, and I learned about forms, and I learned about composite solutions that Microsoft was pushing hard and heavy at that time. And I was like, that's really cool because they're doing some things to automate some processes, and I can do some similar things inside of SharePoint. And so for me, the movie kind of crossed over into some things that I was already interested in and things that I was already learning. So for me, SharePoint became my Jarvis. It became my rather very intelligent system. But it became a rather very intelligent SharePoint. So I could build business solutions using workflow and automation. 2010 was released, they had updated the workflow engine, they had updated some of the form solutions, At the time, we were still using tools like SharePoint Designer and InfoPath, and that's really where I got my start in kind of this whole ecosystem. And a lot of it was based off of wanting to build something like Jarvis and just not having the tools. Now we have Siri and Cortana and Alexa, we have the HomeKits and everything. But at the time, we had to build a lot of this ourselves, and so I ended up doing a lot of that through SharePoint. So with that, transitioning to Teams. So over the last 10 years, just about, I've done a lot in SharePoint. I still do a lot of business solutions. I speak at conferences, and I talk about building a business process automation, taking the sum of what I'm given and turning it into something much, much bigger. So for the longest time, it's been, here's SharePoint, here's workflows, here's form solutions. What can we build for a business to make things a little easier for end users, to build a composite solution that's greater than the sum of the parts, to drive more efficiency in the workflow in a place, to make things a little bit more productive for users. And that story's evolved over the last 8 or so years, from SharePoint 2010 to 2013, and then even into SharePoint Online. So that's really where the core of a lot of my focus comes in. As we moved away from like InfoPath into tools like Power Apps, as we moved away from SharePoint Designer workflows and we moved into Microsoft Flow, as SharePoint's evolved from an on-prem only solution to SharePoint Online and part of Office 365, the tools and things that I worked with previously have started to kind of integrate more with one another. It's easier to build business solutions. But a couple of years ago, Microsoft released Teams. And Teams really shifts that whole scenario in a positive way. Teams really integrates the best of all of Office 365 into one application. It makes it easy for me to collaborate with other users. It makes it easy for me to build solutions and push that out to a team. And it gives me one-stop shop for basically everything that I need. So with Teams, I can kind of work with all these different pieces of Office 365. And I can work with it in a single application that's mobile friendly, that's web friendly, that works on my laptop, that works on my desktop, and that can push out to anyone in the organization very quick and very easy. How many of you have heard of Teams? How many of you have actually used Teams? How many of you have tried to roll out Teams to an organization? A few of you, okay. So this is kind of a workshop that Microsoft put together a couple of years ago. Made some changes to it, updated it, modernized it just a little bit. But this is a workshop that you can deliver in your organization to roll out and implement Teams to your user base. And as far as like we move through this, I'll do a lot of demo. If you have questions, kind of let me know along the way. If I can answer it right away, I will. If I need to parking lot it, I will, and I'll make sure that we get back to you and get you an answer from there. So we'll do some things that are hands-on. Let me know how deep we need to go into this. I don't know if we're 100, 200, 300 with this audience, but let me know kind of how deep we need to go into that. I'll infer some of that from your questions as we move forward. So I'm going to do an introduction into Teams. We'll talk a little bit about the architecture. We'll talk about the Teams clients and some of the licensing, and then we'll talk about managing Teams. I'm not going to go real deep into network planning or security, because some of that's even changed from the time that I've updated this PowerPoint presentation. But we'll talk a little bit about organizing your teams, and then I'm going to give you some best practices kind of along the way, and I'll also point you to a number of resources that you can go back and look at. Now, typically, whenever you would deliver something like this in the organization, you're going to want to have a number of different attendees that represent different points of view, different divisions within the organization. Having a project sponsor is definitely going to help. That way we can start to plan out how we're going to roll this out, because this is not something you just flip a switch, throw it out there, and you tell everybody to just go and use it. It does require some planning. This project manager is going to help with that. Business analysts are going to be able to provide a point of view from how it's going to impact the business overall. IT pros and network IT pros are going to be a big part of rolling this out, because there are network considerations that you're going to have. And then adoption specialists, support leads, training, that's going to be a big part of it as well. So we'll talk a little bit about some best practices there. The main thing we want to take away from this is that we want to have a deep understanding of what Teams is capable of, and then how that can fit into your organization. From there, we want to build a foundation. This is something you're going to roll out slowly and then grow over time. And then you want to start thinking about how this is going to affect your users as they transition from maybe different solutions or legacy solutions into something a little bit more modern. So introduction into Teams. So many of you raised your hand and you've seen Teams before. How many of you have never used Teams at all? Quite a few of you, okay. As we're going through this, I'll demo it, but afterward, I'll leave a little bit of time if you want to kind of walk through it, get hands-on with it, I'll leave some time for that. The thing you need to know about Teams is that it's a tool that works with the Office 365 platform. It takes everything that's great about Office 365 and combines it into one application that's a chat-based workspace. So what that means is the main thing that Teams deliver is conversation, chat. So Teams is going to allow you to communicate one-to-one, one-to-many, and you can do that privately. But it also allows you to have conversations one-to-many publicly. So it's a chat-based client. That's the main component out of it. So rather than sending emails and having to deal with replies and reply alls and threaded conversations, we can have a chat or a conversation in Teams, and then we can go back and easily search through it. Other people can join in and maybe see the history associated with it, or they can join in and just continue the conversation moving forward. So the main thing is it's a chat-based tool. It allows us to have a one-to-one, one-to-many conversation, either public or private. But it's also a place to work. It's also a hub for teamwork. So when we're collaborating in the workspace, I'm on my computer, somebody sends me an email. Well, if I'm on a website, I got to leave the web browser and I got to go over to my Outlook client. So there's context switching. If somebody sends me a chat through Skype, I've got to leave Outlook and I've got to switch over to Skype. Context switching. Every time we do that, we lose focus and we lose attention. If I need to go and find a file, I go to my File Explorer. So I have to leave those tools and I have to go to File Explorer to find the file that I want. It's again, context switching. So what Teams is going to do is give me one application that makes it easy for me to have a conversation, manage my files, and still communicate and do it from one application. So it's going to limit the amount of context switching that I'm actually going to have. It's going to help me to keep my focus and to keep moving forward. Not only is it going to be one application to do that, but I can work right from Teams. So I can work with documentation like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Windows right inside of Teams and not have to leave Teams at all. Someone can send me a file and I can open it up right in Teams, or I can go back and find my recent files right inside of Teams. Another great thing about it is that each team can be customized for that team. So you can have multiple teams that you're part of, multiple groups of people that you work with, and each team application in Microsoft Teams can be specific to that team. So I can have a team that I work with on a project, and we have a private team that we work on. We have our files, we have our conversation, we have our content right inside of there. But then I can have another team that I'm a member of, and we can have different conversations and different information. And I just switch channels or I switch teams in order to do that right inside of the client. It makes it easy for me to move from one team to another. Studies are now showing that in today's modern workplace, that when you get hired in an organization, you're working anywhere from 2 to 5 teams as soon as you move in or you start onboarding. So you might get hired as an IT pro at a company, but as soon as you get in, you get pulled into a project over here. That's team number 2. You get pulled into another project over here. That's team number 3. And so average is 2 to 5 teams pretty much right away. And then security. It's built on Office 365, so it uses the Office 365 security model. So you're going to get enterprise level security inside of there. Things like your conversations are going to be encrypted and stored inside of Exchange. Your files are going to be secured inside of Sharepoint sites. You're also going to be able to access private information, private files inside of OneDrive that only you can access and work with inside of Teams. But it's built on the Office 365 model. Now, they also have it set up so you can easily switch from one tenant to another. So you could be a member of maybe a public tenant or an organizational tenant and log into another organizational tenant, and we can allow external access as well. Just built on the sort of Microsoft security model. So it does a lot of different things, but at the core, it's a chat-based collaboration tool. That's what it does. So chat for today. It works on mobile, works on laptop, works on desktop, but it allows me to have that conversation. So I can go in, and if I'm onboarding to a team, I can see the previous conversation that that team's had. So it's really helpful to lower some of the onboarding barriers that new users face when they join up with a new project or if they onboard into an organization. The history is there and it's completely searchable. The team activities are visible to everyone inside of the team. You're going to be able to create private chats for small groups as you need it. And the private chats, whenever users get in, onboarded into those, you can limit their ability to view the history that's associated with it. And it's mobilely accessible. So right away, it's going to work on iOS, it's going to work on Android. And for the 3 people still holding on to their Windows phones that are no longer going to work at the end of the year, it's going to work on Windows too. It's a place for teamwork. Every single team has channels. Channels have tabs. Tabs are where we store our content. So inside of there, I can go into a channel and I can see information and files. I can see information and files and content specific to that team and to that channel. Within a team, I can have multiple channels, and that just allows me to compartmentalize information and display what I need for that particular subset of my users. Teams also works with video and voice. So the team client would allow you to take phone calls. I take phone calls from Teams on my phone all the time. Pull over to the parking lot, you're allowed to see me sitting there having a conversation right inside of Teams. I can participate in video from my mobile device, just using my cellular data if I want. I can connect the Wi-Fi and use that. But it allows me to have voice and video meetings right inside of the client. I can launch it from a private chat. I can also schedule it through Exchange, or I can go into a team channel in a public conversation. I can launch a meeting right from there. The voice and video inside of Teams, I think, is head and shoulders above what it is with Skype for Business. I know I've had growing pains with Skype over the years. It hasn't been the best experience. Using Teams, I haven't had many of the problems that I had in Skype previously. They've done a lot to optimize the video, to optimize the bandwidth there. So I think it's a huge improvement. And then I can work with content right inside of Teams. I think one of my favorite things is that Teams integrates with things like SharePoint and OneNote and Planner and other applications. But I can work with that content right inside of Teams and not have to leave. I like doing demos on SharePoint about co-authoring. Multiple people working on the same document at the same time. Well, I can do that in Teams quickly and easily, and I'll show you a demo of that in just a little bit. Every team that you create, though, is fully customizable. You can do that through channels. You can do that through tabs inside of there. Channels just give us little pockets of conversation, little places to work, and then we can add tabs inside of that. That allows us to focus in on the content that's important for that channel. So you can showcase documents. You can publish lists from SharePoint. You can highlight content from the World Wide Web. You can embed like videos from like YouTube if you need to. But you can also go in there and your developers can work with it. They can create custom solutions. Not only that, but you can also work with bots. So you can create bots to interact with your users, like a Q&A bot, like for a help desk scenario. And as your users interact with it, it'll get smarter and it'll improve over time. We can make sure that anything that we put inside of the channel and inside of the tabs helps our users so that they don't miss important information. But each team can customize this to meet their unique needs. So say, for example, I have a team that we're doing project management. We could have a channel related to a specific project. We could have a tab for Planner, and we can use that for task management. We could have an additional tab for any documents related to the project, like the document charter or a scope document or a specification document. We get that right inside of that channel. Quick and easy for users to access. And security, it applies to, and this is actually outdated. They've actually updated a lot of this, but it does apply enterprise-grade security all across. I work a lot with Atrium Health. I do a lot of training for them. They use it internally. It applies or complies with the HIPAA guidelines. We can also put things like compliance and liability and e-discovery on top of it. And anything that happens in Teams, from a conversation to content being shared or collaborated on, we can have that security in place. Data is encrypted pretty much at all times, and you can even enable multi-factor authentication on top of it. The e-discovery things have recently been updated, and Microsoft's in the process right now of rolling out new compliance and security features. We have DLP, digital data loss prevention. We have labels, retention schedules. We have sensitive information identifying tools. Teams works with all of that. So say, for example, somebody were to upload a document via Teams that had maybe patient healthcare information, PHI, or maybe they were to upload a document with credit card information in it. We could identify that from the Security Compliance Center in Office 365. We could put blocks on the ability of those users to share that, and we can limit external access to that information if we wanted, even though a user was trying to push it through Teams. So the security will extend from Office 365 all the way there. All right, so we kind of gone over some of the basics. I'm going to do some demos in just a few minutes. Main thing to keep in mind, chat-based client. Private conversations, public conversations. Channels are actually built around conversations. Now, the backbone of this whole thing, Office 365 groups. How many of you are familiar with Office 365 groups? A few of you. So I'll baseline here in just a moment and kind of explain that a little bit more. But Office 365 groups is a permission model, allows me to extend permissions from my SharePoint into other pieces of Office 365, including Teams. And as part of an Office 365 group, there's different tools or different apps that kind of roll into it. So things like Outlook, Skype, SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, they're all going to be part of the conversation when we start actually working with Teams. We can create one permission model through Office 365 groups and have it automatically apply to the other tools that are out there. This allows us to build a complete solution. One set of permissions to maintain. We can allow in contributors, we can allow in owners, and they'll be able to access the content that's inside of there. It also works with the Microsoft Graph. Anybody familiar with the Graph? A couple of you. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Graph, it's kind of the engine that powers all of this. It's a analytics, search, and machine learning engine on the back end. When you run a search in Office 365 and you get relevant, recent, and personalized results, the Graph powers that. It looks at the things that you work on. It looks at who you communicate with, who you work with, who works on the same content that you work on. And your search results are ranked and relevant based off of that. You see the recent things that you work on, and you see that all across Office 365 now. You open up a document in Word. When you go to SharePoint, it'll say you worked on this recently. You open up a file in Teams, you go back to PowerPoint, it'll say you opened this up in Teams just a little while ago. Graph powers that. But Graph also powers developer API and custom solutions. So our developers can use Graph to further our experience through Office 365 with custom development, which is pretty cool. And then there's the security model, which we've already talked about. So let's go and actually meet Teams. Now there are a couple of clients, and I'll just briefly introduce that, and then I'll go into this. The clients that we have, there's the web client, there's the desktop client, and there's the mobile. For the longest time, the desktop client had all the features built into Teams. The mobile client had most of the features, and then the web, strictly out of the web browser, was a little bit more limited. But I have noticed more of a one-to-one parity over the last couple of months with the desktop and the web client. For the longest time, the desktop was the only place that I could do video-based calls. I've noticed that they opened that up in the web browser here recently, so I can actually do a video call right from my web browser, and I don't have to open the desktop client. I like using the desktop client because it just kind of stays down in the taskbar whenever I need it. That's the one I'll start demoing, but I'll show you a version pretty much of all of these. So, this is Microsoft Teams.
This is where you're looking for the emails that we sent?
Yep, I'm going to add you to a team in just a moment. Yep. So this is my Microsoft Teams client. This is the desktop application. Now, just to briefly kind of walk through a couple of things. Right up here on the left-hand side, these are all the teams that I have. Each one of these are actually backed by an Office 365 group. So every one of those have different members, different teams make it up. There are members and there are owners in each one of them, but they're all powered by Office 365 groups. So you can see I'm a member of quite a few teams here. And there's even more that are hidden. And one of the things I think I've read recently, they're going to automatically start hiding teams. So if you haven't been or visited a team in like 45 days, they'll move it down to hidden, so you won't see it. And then most active teams will actually be kind of up at the top for you. So right away, the first thing I have in here are the actual teams that I work with. Now I'm going to start on the left-hand side, kind of go over the navigation of the UI just a little bit to put it in perspective, and then we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper from there. So starting off right up at the top, I have activity. Now activity is going to allow me to see any messages that I've received, like a one-to-one chat or a group chat. It's also going to allow me to see any time that I mention, if someone likes something that I posted or someone actually gives me praise. I would actually see all of my activity in there, and I would click on it, but I've got some NDA stuff that I'm not allowed to showcase, so I'm not going to actually click on activity. But if I click on activity and I view a message, it'll actually take me right inside of Teams to where that message or where that communication originated. So my activity feed is kind of where I start off inside of here. Below that, I have my chat. So that's all of the private chats that I host. So I can open that up and I can see private chats that I'm a member of. That's one-to-one or one-to-many. I can start new chats from here, or I can continue pre-existing chats from there. Now, when this first started, they had this really awesome bot called T-Bot. And T-Bot was kind of a Q&A bot, a question bot that you could communicate with. T-Bot's been retired, unfortunately. I really liked T-Bot. But I had a conversation with T-Bot whenever I was kind of first starting out in Microsoft Teams. So like I would go in, and we have our whole chat history there. I could go back and search it at any time. But I could ask T-Bot a question. They started kind of phasing him out, and I was like, what's the weather in Charlotte? And they told me we're working on updates, and T-Bot's been retired. But earlier on in the conversation, he would give me like responses, which is pretty cool. But this just represents the chat. So I can have a conversation with a bot or a person or a group of people, and I would get the entire history and be able to go through and work with that. In addition, we had tools right down in here to communicate. So I could just go in, type a question, or if I wanted to, I could go in and make a really fancy message, including format, links, and whatnot. It also supported things like your emojis and GIFs and whatnot. And then lastly, there were some messaging tools. I could add in other items. Praise is relatively new. I'll come back to that in a little bit. But I could also, if I wanted to, pretty much right from here, I could start a conversation or a mobile meeting or a meetup with somebody right from there. I could call you right from the chat client. So chat's a big part of this. Then you got your Teams tab. That just shows you all the teams that you're a member of. Each team has channels and tabs built into it. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. It actually integrates with Exchange. So you can actually pull in your calendar. So you can get all of your meetings and all of your updates right from there. Don't have to leave the client to do that. It hasn't hit my tenant yet, but they're going to expand this view, and they're going to give you a full-on calendar view like you would get in an Outlook. So you can see all the days and all the weeks and your whole calendar there. That's already been announced. It's already live in some tenants. I just haven't seen it in mine quite yet. The cool thing I like about this is I can schedule a meeting from here, and it'll actually send out meeting invites through Exchange and Outlook to other people, but I can also join in a meeting from here. And you can send me a Skype for Business meeting. I can join from here, and it'll redirect me to the Skype client. But I could also join in a Teams meeting from here, and if you're in Teams, we could just have a meeting right inside of Teams. I've got calls. This is a video and call-based client. So I can go in and I can start a conversation, or I can have a call right from there. I can do this on my laptop. I can do this on my mobile phone. You can call me in my Teams client on my mobile phone, and you just use my username of my company or my email address. And it'll ring on my phone, and then I can pick it up and answer, but I can also do the same thing right from here. This is a client that I'm working with, and I can go in and I can call them right from here. Now, he's technically in Teams, but he's in Teams in another organization. So when we did the call the other day, it automatically redirected to Skype for Business, and it connected him to Skype for Business, and we communicated that way. So it just opened up Skype for Business, even though we were in two separate Teams tenants. It does have that logic built into it. So I can launch new calls from here, view my call history, my contacts, and everything. And then I have my files. It actually allows me to manage and maintain all of my files, all the things that are important to me, right from here. So this is technically showing me content that I have in my Office 365 and also some of my clients' Office 365 accounts. These are things that I have permissions to. These are files that I've worked on recently. I updated my instructor bio before the presentation, right up there at the top. I worked on Conference's OneNote notebook a few days ago, right up there at the top. So I can see my files from OneDrive, but also the files that I have access in the Sharepoint tenants that I'm a member of right from there. And if I want to work a little bit more closely, like if I want to dive into my OneDrive, there we go. Open it up, takes me right into my OneDrive, my files and my folders, and I can see everything. If I want to work with content, I can actually do it right from here pretty easily. So I'd be able to go in, select the file, open it up, and I get an Office Online experience right inside of the Teams client. So there's my presentation. I can actually deliver the whole thing inside of Microsoft Teams if I wanted to. But I can also, if I need to, go right in and edit that right from here. And I can choose my editing experience. Edit Teams using Office Online, use my web browser in Office Online, or I can open it up in the client application and I can work right from there. Close it out whenever I'm done, share it if I need to, but I can work right from the Teams client without actually having to leave and pretty much get the full experience of Office. In addition, if these tools aren't really your flavor, you can go in and add additional storage. So you got options for additional storage if you need it. So if you're using Box and Dropbox and those tools, then you can connect and you can work with that. And for those of you who are IT pros or admins, yes, we can turn that off. All right. A couple last things. You're going to be able to go in and add content here. So this would allow you to actually add more apps. We'll talk about apps a little bit more in depth in a few minutes, but we can add apps there. We can add apps down at the bottom, and we get a full help desk. Now the help desk is kind of the evolution of T-Bot. It's not as helpful as T-Bot. I can ask him a question and he'd go find this stuff for me. But they do have built-in help right inside of Teams. So you have topics and training and what's new. So you can go right into their training center. They have video-based training. They have some self-based training, but they have that for end users, for IT pros, and for admins. It's all built right inside of Teams. Whenever I'm teaching people how to use Teams, tell them to reference this. You get stuck on something, can't find it, go here and search for it. It's built into the Teams client. So they are constantly updating this. They do new training initiatives and new tools all the time, pretty much every week, and they try to update it pretty frequently. The other thing about help that's really important is what's new. It's really hard to keep up with the release cadence that they have. SharePoint, they used to release updates about every 3 years, maybe a cumulative update like once in between. Office about every 3 years. Now they're doing updates almost every single week. That's all across Office 365. So this is really helpful to kind of keep track of some of the new features that they're rolling out. I do a lot of this on Twitter as well, but it's really helpful to go in here and just kind of see the update and then a link to maybe some articles and how to use it. For example, March 29th, they started releasing a praise tool. Just tell somebody you like what they're doing. So it's all built into the Teams client. All right, so that was the desktop version. Just real quick, this is the web browser version. So you can see I've got an address bar right up at the top. I have activity there. This is a different user, so I can show the feed. Chats, one-to-one, one-to-many. Teams that this person's a member of. So it's a very similar experience here in the web as to what you have on the desktop client. And mobile's going to look a little different. I didn't plug in my mobile, but mobile's going to look a little different. You'll still have activity, you'll have chat, you'll have Teams, meetings, and calls. But there you're also going to be able to highlight and feature whether you want files and save and organizational and things like that. Mobile does have a couple other options which are pretty cool that you don't quite get in the web browser, but we'll circle back to that. So that's kind of the overview and then the Teams client. Now I'm going to dive deeper into a couple other topics as we move forward. Any questions so far?
As far as the security model, you can work with people in under tenants. Can you also work with people that aren't in an Office 365 tenant? Can they be a member of a team? Can you provide them content from a team?
So the question here in the front is related to security and access. You can work within the Office 365 tenant that you're in, but can you work with external entities like maybe guest users? Yes, it does support guest users. So we can have, you could be a member of a team and be a guest and log in, access the chat, access the content that's inside of there. Now from a security standpoint, we can limit what you can do when you do access it as a guest, but yes, they do have the ability to log in as a guest into Teams, and you can work from there. In fact, they have a Teams a free version of Teams that's not connected to an Office 365 organization, and you can have up to I think 200 members, 250 members inside of that free version. and you can use that as a lightweight collaboration tool.
The guest, is that unique guests or is that a generic guest? You have
So the follow-up question is, the guest, is it a generic guest or is it like a unique guest? It's actually a unique guest. What's going to happen when I add you to my team as a guest, all I have is your email address. That's going to create an entity in my Azure Active Directory, in my Office 365 Azure Active Directory. Now currently there's a limit. I think it's 500,000 entities in Azure AD. That kind of subtracts from that. So I wouldn't open up my team publicly to the entire world because then I'm going to lose all my licensing or all my entities in Azure AD. But it does add that entity in there, and it is a unique guest, and we can control it and remove them later if we need to. All right. I'm not going to worry about the clients. All right, so just briefly, I'm going to go through this checklist, and this is what you would do if you're like rolling this out in the organization, or say, for example, you hired me to come in and do this in the organization. I would walk through the checklist with your team, and we would do this interactive. So I'm going to go through the bullet points here, show you all the different pieces, and this is where I'm actually going to add many of you to my team's client and make you members. So the first thing you would do is you would have your users go in and actually install the client. It's really easy. Just go to teams.microsoft.com. You can download it from there. Then we would actually go in and create a team. So let's do that. Let's create a team. So I'm going to go in, and you can create a team from a couple of different places. You can do it from your admin portal, or you can actually do it right from Teams, right over here. So I'm going to go in and create a team right from here. A couple of cool things. Once you start creating teams, users can actually join the team with the code. So once the team is actually created, you can give them a code, and they can just enter that code in, and they'll be able to join in right from there without having to follow all the links. Another thing about creating a team is in the organization, teams can be public or private. So I could have a public team, like maybe org-wide, that everybody could see, and anybody could join or leave at any time. And I could also have private teams, and they wouldn't be able to search for that. You'd have to be a member of the team in order to access it, know that it's actually there. So I'm going to create a team. And this is what we start with. So the first thing it wants to know is, do you want to build this from scratch, or do you want to start from an existing Office 365 group? Now I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to expand on starting from an existing Office 365 group. In SharePoint Online right now, we have many different versions of team sites. We have classic or legacy sites. Those are the same kinds of sites that we've worked on in SharePoint previously. Let me show you. This is technically a classic SharePoint site. And let me just go to here. This is technically a classic SharePoint site based off this SharePoint 2013. This just happens to be in SharePoint Online. Classic sites can look like this. This is the classic user interface. But classic sites can also look like this. The classic SharePoint site can have a modern user interface on top of it. It's still basically the same site that you've worked in previously, 2013 or 2016 on-prem, but it's a classic site, and sometimes it's referred to as a little team site, a little teams site. Now, in Office 365, I can take that little team site and I can connect it to an Office 365 group. When I connect to an Office 365 group, I'm creating a groupified site. Now, this is not, I don't know that this is actually in the dictionary anywhere. I'm not sure if groupify is an actual word in Webster's, but that's the terminology that Microsoft's using right now, groupify. And what that does is it changes my permission model a little bit. And it takes this site and it connects it to other pieces of Office 365, like Planner, like Yammer, like Teams, like Exchange for shared mailboxes, or for shared calendars. And so technically, a classic site could become a groupified site. So this represents a groupified site. Now it's got the modern user interface, so how do I know that this is a Office 365 group site? Well, if I hover over right here, it tells me that this is a public group. It tells me how many people are in it, also gives me guests, and it shows me some of the other objects that's associated with the site, like the shared calendar, the shared mailbox, the OneNote notebook, the SharePoint site, planner. So this is a groupified site. This is where teams actually can start. So if you have an Office 365 group-enabled site, you can build a team off of that. In fact, they made it really easy for us. They had this little icon right over here. So if I had an Office 365 group site, I could start right from there. Now, when I start from there and I create or I connect my Microsoft team, I'm then teamifying that site. That's often referred to as big T. So you got little t for legacy, we got groupified, then we got big T for Microsoft Teams sites. And so that's going to connect it to Teams as the chat-based client, and then it'll have some of the other pieces from Office 365 built into it. So the reason I'm showing you all of this is because if you're an IT pro or you're an admin and you're rolling this out in your organization, you don't have to rebuild all of your sites. You can take your little t site and groupify it, and you can take your groupified site and you can teamify it. And so you can move through that progression and you can take what you already have and just modernize it. So they've made it a little bit easy for us to do that. You can do a lot of it through PowerShell, you can do some of it through the admin portal, or you can do it right through the web interface. So we can start with little t and we can move up to big T. Now I'm going to start with big T from scratch. Now I can do, I can do public, private, or I can do org-wide. Now org-wide, anybody in my Office 365 tenant would be able to access it. Public would mean anybody in my org could join it whenever they wanted. And private just means I need to let you into the team. So I'm going to do a public one here. This is what I'm going to name it. Then I'm going to go ahead and create it. Now that's doing a couple of different things. It's creating the team client for me. It's building the group model, the Office 365 group model. It's building a SharePoint site on the back end. It's connecting in other tools like Planner or Yammer or Stream or Power BI or maybe a shared mailbox or maybe a shared calendar through Outlook. So it's going to build all of that for me. Now I can go in and I can start adding people to the team.
Is it doing that based on templates you've already set up?
So the question up here is, all the things that it's building, is it doing that based off the templates that I've already set up? No, that's actually out of the box. It's adding all of those components as an out of the box. And I've got a slide coming up that explains that a little bit more in depth. But when you create an Office 365 group, depending on where you create it from, certain apps are already integrated into it automatically. So it's going to create all of that for me. So just by hitting public a minute ago, it went ahead and created a SharePoint site. But it's based off of the group model, and it's already connected into this. Now, I can go in and start adding people from my organization right inside of this. There's my buddy, Student 9, who's a big Iron Man fan, so we're going to make sure he's a part of this team. So I can go ahead and add him right into it. And so now I've got a colleague in there, and I can determine his role right away. So as I'm building it, owner, member, whatever, right away. I'm making him a member. Now I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and it's going to redirect me to my team. And as part of redirecting me to my team, it's already created a channel. Every team gets one primary channel, general. You can't delete it, it's built into it. And general is really important because that's your main public conversation. So for this particular team, general is where we're going to have the main conversation. Now there are other things that we can add to that. We'll explore that here in just a couple of minutes. But right away, it tells me some activity in the center. So I can see Andy went ahead and added Student 9. Now I can hover over Student 9, I get a people card, and I can start communicating with that person right from here. Quick and easy. But I can also go in, I can add in additional people, create more channels, or I can open up the FAQ. Or I can just have a conversation by myself, and as other people get onboarded, they can see that conversation. They might think I'm a little crazy, but at least they'll be able to see the conversation. Now, going back to my checklist, we've created the team. So add some attendees to the team and create a channel. Now I've already added one person to the team. So let's go and add some more people to the team. So let me go to Outlook for just a second. There we go. So I got a couple of guest users that want to join in. As I'm doing this, I should mention I got a conference coming up, and I'm trying to figure out a way to have you fill out a form in Microsoft Teams and then just have Flow automatically add you to my team. I just have to figure out how to do it in Azure Active Directory. Too bad I can't hire Jarvis to do that for me. So I'm adding all these users, and I think I got everybody. It's everyone that I saw. If I didn't, for some reason, just give me a heads up. But it's telling me, it's identifying all of you are guests as you're being added to this. Now going back to the question we had earlier, are they identified as generic guests or like actual individual users? It recognizes them as an individual user, uses their username, but everywhere they're in there, it puts them in parentheses as guests, and it actually adds them to my Azure AD, and I'll be able to see them as objects inside of there later. All right, so I go back and I see all those members have been added to my team. So I believe it does send you a notification, and you can click on that, and you should be able to open Teams and get into my Teams client.
So they have to have the client downloaded, installed, and running in order to be.
I think it's part of the notification that they're sent. It actually prompts them to download Teams and then log in, open and log in from there.
Yeah, it allowed me to just do it via the web app.
All right, so we're in Teams. So everybody's getting familiar in Teams. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. I think I got them all. All right. So while you're all getting familiar, this is our channel. So this is the main channel, general. We have our conversation. And we can communicate right from here. And so we can have conversations running, and we can have separate conversations happening basically underneath this channel. Now this is public for this team. So anybody that joins can see the conversation that we're having. It's searchable, it's persistent, they're going to be able to go back. But there's benefits to that. If you're onboarding for a project, everything you need is there, just read through the conversation that we've already had. You're already a member of the team, so we've already privatized based off of that, and the whole conversation is going to be there for you. Now, within this particular channel, I have conversations at the top, but I also have files. These are files that our team might be working with, or our team might be sharing. This channel stores its files in a SharePoint document library. So from an architecture standpoint, SharePoint is required on the back end if you want to be able to store and work with files. Now there's a whole controversy going on right now about channels inside of Teams, and I'll just go ahead and get it out of the way right now. General is available to anybody who's a member of the team. But a lot of users out in the world, they want to be able within a team to create private channels. So they want to be able to compartmentalize within the team and have a channel that's private for a subset of members within the team. So Microsoft heard people talking about that for a few years. They saw it on user voice, and they decided, they announced they're going to release private channels. How they're going to do that is where the controversy stems. This channel connects to a document library, and each channel is a subfolder in one document library inside of the site. I'll show you that in just a moment. What Microsoft wants to do to privatize channels is create a whole new SharePoint site. And some users don't want that. They want a private document library in the site that was already created for this particular team. Microsoft says, no, we need to create a whole new SharePoint site for that. So if you have private channels, let's say you've got 5 private channels in one team, you've got 6 SharePoint sites that you've got to maintain. Some users aren't really happy with that. I don't have anything to do with that flight. I don't really care. I'll just use what they tell me to use. All right, so we have files. There's a wiki. The wiki will actually be stored in my site as well. I think the wiki is kind of overkill because we have OneNote, and I think OneNote does wiki better than Wiki does wiki. That's just my opinion. But it does have a wiki built into it, so you can create wiki libraries and wiki pages. I prefer OneNote. And then I can go in and add in additional tabs. And we'll talk more about this in just a little bit, but I can do all kinds of things. I can create a tab and point it at a Word document. I can create a tab to show you the contents of a document library outside of the main channel library. I can create a tab and embed a Power BI report or show you a Microsoft Planner plan or embed a stream video. This is where the application starts to integrate everything from Office 365. By adding different tabs, each team can focus in on the pieces of information that are important.
There's your Survey Monkey. Can you add that in for your survey?
I could use SurveyMonkey, but I could also use Microsoft Forms and get many of the same features and not have to pay for SurveyMonkey. But yeah, we could add that in. This one's my favorite though. If I'm going to do surveys, polling. I can create a poll, put that in a channel, and you can respond to it right inside of the conversation, and then I can go back and get results. It's kind of a free bot, which is pretty cool. And one that they just introduced, Yammer. Have you heard the conversation about inner loop and outer loop for communication? All right, so let me take just a minute to explain this. This is a picture somewhere. It might take too long to find, so let's just do this. All right, so Microsoft's got this slide that they've been using for the last couple of years that ties to Office 365 groups, and it talks about communication, inner loop versus outer loop. Outlook and email kind of expand the whole thing. With Outlook and email, it could be internal to your team, but it could also be external to your organization, or it could be external to your team within your organization, so other parts of the organization that you're not part of. So they've been talking about inner loop and outer loop, and email and Outlook kind of extend that. They look at Yammer as an outer loop tool, outer loop within the organization. So Yammer is a way that we can create like a discussion board for just our organization. You have to be behind the firewall to get into it, but you can go and have conversations and discussions, and we can organize it within little subgroups within Yammer. Teams, on the other hand, is more for the inner loop. Teams is for the team that you work with in your office every single day, the people that you see every single day, the people that you work on a project with, or the 2 to 5 groups of teams that you work with internally. So Teams is a more concentrated group of people within your organization. The thing that all these have in common is that they usually share files and sites and content. So inner loop and outer loop has been a big debate in the SharePoint world, or in the Office 365 world. And so whenever Teams came along, some people were like, well, can't you just create a team channel that's org-wide and get rid of Yammer altogether? And technically you could, but Yammer has its use case and it has its capabilities. So recently, what Microsoft did was they integrated Yammer as a channel application inside of Teams. Now, some people look at that and they're like, why do I need outer loop in my inner loop? Why do I need to, confuse all of that? Why do I need, and they look at Yammer as a social network. Why do I need social in my Teams client, which could also be a social network? And the business case that I've seen around that that's really helpful, and the healthcare client that I work with does this, they use Yammer as a way to kind of crowdsource help desk. So we have a SharePoint channel. If you have a question about SharePoint, we ask number 1, go to Yammer and search to see if somebody else has had the same question. And if not, then you can ask the question in Yammer. We'll get notifications as an IT team. We can respond to it, but also other people from the organization can help chime in. Oh, here's how I did it. Or, hey, that's really helpful. Thanks for helping out. So we're using it as kind of a help desk tool. Now, there's silly things in there. There are people sharing cat videos, and there are people talking about their weekend, but we have serious channels inside of Yammer as well. So we took that Yammer conversation and we put it inside of Teams for our adoption group. So if people have a technical question, we have a SharePoint adoption group. And we can see that without having to leave Teams. I don't have to switch applications. And I think that's the perfect business case for it. It blends the outer loop and the inner loop together. So just going back to my Teams client, I can add in Yammer as a tab and communicate with the outer loop without having to leave my inner loop team. So I get something really technical. Hey, they're telling us SharePoint services are out. I can mention that to my team. Anybody else having a problem with SharePoint services? No, it's just that office. It might be an internet issue. And so we can very quickly identify issues across the organization, but work on it as a team.
So you'll see that come across in your activities.
Yeah. Yep, we can set it up to come across in the activities, or I can make mention of it, and then my team will see it as an activity thing. It'll give them a notification, even a notification on their desktop, and they will be able to access it. Reply back to Yammer right from Teams. So we can use these tabs to do all kinds of things. There's a ton of content that you can add for a lot of different things. You can even add bots inside of it. But every channel has a conversation, and every channel has files, a wiki, and then you can add in additional channels to customize it for that particular team. All right, so going back, there's the screenshot. I'm going to give that a like. You can like and you can praise and you can save things. I'll show you how to do some of that in a moment. But going back, we've seen the main, we've seen how to add users. Now let's go in and actually work with creating a channel. So if I'm working with this, we've got our general channel, and that's just general to the team. Well, let's say I have something specific that I want my team to focus in on, or a specific project or upcoming initiative. I can create a channel around that. Now, guests cannot create channels, but me as the owner or a member, they can go in and create a channel. So I can go in and I can say right here, add channel. What's my channel going to be? Or MS Teams. And because I'm the owner, I can automatically make this a favorite for everyone. Favorite means you're going to receive things like notifications. So I'll go ahead and add that. And now I have a channel. Now this new channel has its own conversation built into it. And that's separate from the general conversation. Two completely different histories, but they're both persistent. This one has its own separate files. There's now a subfolder in my SharePoint document library. It also has its own wiki, and I can add in additional tabs here that are specific to this channel. Now, if you're a member of the team, you can access both channels. In the future, here soon, they'll release private channels, and they'll compartmentalize that. I've got 2 questions.
Can you do like video conferencing within the channels?
We're building up to that, but yes,
Okay.
we can. Yeah, I could go in right here, and I could start a video conference and just go live. And if you weren't into it initially, you could join in whenever you're ready. But yeah, we can do video conferencing right in the channel conversation.
In terms of managing the individual SharePoint sites that this creates, because it kind of makes a jumbled mess. If you go in and look at SharePoint, after a bunch of people have created pages and OneNote documents and things like that, how do you recommend kind of managing those SharePoint sites in a way that, you know, an admin could go in and see that this is something that nobody's touched in a while, it's junk, or this is, you know, these need to be, you know, kind of combined, or...
So the question we have up here in the front, just so everybody can hear it, when you start creating teams, it creates a SharePoint site, and then it starts creating all kinds of content inside of that site. From an IT pro perspective or admin perspective, how do you stay on top of the teams being created? How do you stay on top of all the extra SharePoint sites that you're going to have? Fortunately, some of the reporting in the admin center has gotten a lot better. I don't know if you've seen in Office 365 the modern admin center, the modern. So you can go in there and you can actually create some reports, and they're getting ready to include some more reporting tools. What we've done here at the healthcare client is they actually use Power BI, and they're running some reports based off of Power BI where they're keeping track of the number of sites that have actually been created. But they're also keeping track of how active those sites are, when they were last accessed, and they're doing some self-service with that. They assign an owner to the site, and they have a report that they run, and there's a renewal date for every site, and so they get a notification prior to the renewal date, and then they get another notification on the renewal date. And we keep a list of sites that there was no response or still haven't been active, and then after like X number of years, they go back and delete those sites. They'll make an attempt to contact them, but they had to do some custom work around that. If you want to know a little bit more, find me offline and I can talk about that. But just running some reporting on that has been a big help. And you get some of that from the admin center. I can go in and see, team-enabled sites. There's some filters there. But I can also run reports on when sites were like last used. Follow-up question?
Yeah, and all it is. Do you have to have Azure functional license for the reporting, or, because we have a hybrid system.
Right. So
I'm just kind of wondering how our Active Directory, which talks, but at the same time, it's not.
they're doing their reporting for Power BI, so they can connect to on-prem and they can connect to cloud data. They're all in the cloud though. They were hybrid for a little while. They're migrating from 2010 to SharePoint Online, so they were hybrid for a little while. But they're using Power BI for a lot of the reports, and you can point it at both systems. If you're doing a hybrid environment, you're going to have your Active Directory on-prem, and then you're going to have, I think, a federation to the cloud. You're still going to be able to do reporting against that if you need to. You just have to connect Power BI into it. But that's how they set it up. You don't have to use that method. That's just they prefer Power BI, and they did a couple of custom reports around that. But some of the out-of-the-box stuff, you just go into your SharePoint admin portal, and there's a filter. I'll show it to you offline. There's a filter, and you can say, just show me team sites or Office 365 group sites, and it gives you a good bit of metadata from there. And the graph is also something you can connect into, and it can give you some of those reports.
I just realized a few times just talking to support, they go, "Well, run this report." We start to do that, and they go, "Oh," and it comes back to the fact that I don't have complete Azure capabilities, so some of the things in the cloud just don't function the way they expect them.
They're making improvements there, for sure.
When you create channels, is it creating a sub-site under the main site?
No. So the question is, when you create a channel, is it creating a subsite under the main site? No, when you create a channel, I'll show you. So I'm going to go right up here to the name of this channel, and I'm going to go and I'm going to say open in SharePoint. So it's going to take me to my web browser, and this is my SharePoint site. This is the name of the team that I created. This is the document library. It created the channel as a subsite, as a folder in the main shared documents library. So every time you create a channel, it's creating a folder. Now that's kind of ironic because for the longest time, Microsoft's been telling us metadata, not folders, metadata, and then they go and create folders. And the private channels, when they release those, the private channels are actually going to create new subsites. Or new sites. They're not subsites. They're also recommending you go flat. No more subsites than one site collections. So it does create that document library there. So when I start uploading files, that's where they're going to live. All right, so pretty straightforward to create a channel. Now right now, all channels are public within the team, but they are starting to roll out. They've already announced private channels, so that conversation is already happening. They'll go first release with it, and then they'll start rolling private channels out from there, take feedback, and then adjust. So going down our checklist, we got a few more things we need to do. Start a conversation, reply to a conversation, and mention somebody. Now this is where it gets nuanced. Start a conversation, reply to a conversation, and mention somebody. We have multiple places we can do that now. I can do that privately with my chat on the left-hand side. I can do that in a channel, or I can do that in a sub-channel for this particular team. So I'll start off in the channel, right here. So I can start a conversation right from there. Now I'm not limited to just text whenever I start a conversation. I could go in and expand and get full formatting features. In addition, while I'm working with this, I can add in my emojis. Actually, and this is a UI thing that you need to be careful with. I just did it, but this is a UI thing. Did you see what happened? When I added the emoji, I added it down here, right? That was starting a whole new conversation. I needed to add it right here. So kind of be careful of that trick. So watch. Go up, and now I get this little, it's subtle,
So,
but it'll get you. Almost call me. They've updated that on mobile. I just saw it today, thankfully. In mobile, it'll say reply, and it'll say start a new conversation. A lot of other chat clients start from the top and then go down. So the most recent's at the top, and then the history's down at the bottom. This one starts from the, you're moving down through here in order to get to the most recent. I can add in Giphies, and you can turn on moderation in this if you want, so it can make it safe for work if you want. There's also a meme creator, and you can turn that on or off. So I can create a meme right inside of there, and you can turn that on or off. I can also, if I wanted to, embed a YouTube video. It'll actually connect right to YouTube. So I can drop that right in. So you can see I'm doing a lot of things before I even hit send here. And so there's my message. Now that's public because it's in this conversation, and so anybody could respond or view it, or they can go back and search through it later. Now, I did get a message just a minute ago. I said, let's chat, and somebody's like, about what? Because it's the desktop client, I get notifications, so if I were to navigate away from this and somebody were to respond, I get a little pop-up in the corner. It even tells me there's a new message, somebody responded.
That's a little advertisement.
Now, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to @mention. And so I'm just going to @mention this person. And they're not only am I responding to them, but if they're not in the client, it'll give them a notification and say you were mentioned somewhere. Now, the cool thing about mentions is it's just an @mention, and then the person's name. But I'm not limited to just that. Watch this. I'm going to @mention the channel. I'm going to say @general.
now it got rid of the @
It did get rid of the @, but if I hover over general, a people card pops up, and then I can communicate from there. So I mentioned the channel, and now anybody who's part of the channel are going to get mentioned, and that's what this icon right here means. It means you've mentioned the channel. So anybody that's part of the channel, we get notified. But I'm going to do one more. I'm going to @mention the whole team, the Microsoft team. And now just @mention the entire team. Now if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see the difference in the icons. That's the channel mentioning, that's the team being mentioned. So it draws attention when you do that. So you can @mention people, the entire channel, or the entire team, which is pretty cool. So we use that as kind of an all points bulletin. So if I'm in that adoption group and something's coming through Gamma, SharePoint services are down, we'll mention like the whole team, make sure everybody gets notified on that. Okay, so we're starting to have that conversation. Was there a question?
Well, if you know Nicole, this is her 3 p.m. resume. She changed it quite a bit.
Actually, it's 2-page now. I need to change the title.
No, I'm just kidding you. 3 p.m. resume, 3-page product manager resume.
But no, it's a
Project manager.
2-page
Is PM product manager or
It's a
project manager?
Product manager now.
Question?
Oh, question on the mention. Can you do a mention to an already existing exchange distribution group?
So the question here is, when you do an app mention, can you mention like a distribution group or security group in AD? So I'm going to say add, and I've got one out there called students. Stop finding it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not going to mention an AE group, but it'll mention the groups that are part of this.
Okay.
Let me try one more version of that.
So what about people who want to treat this kind of like their email and they go up to activity and after they check something, they want to not have it show up on their list. I don't see a way to like get rid of stuff from that activity stuff.
So the question is, what if people want to treat this like their email? And as things are happening in their feed, their activity feed, they want to be able to kind of check it off or have it not show up. Currently, if it's in activity, most recent at the top, and it's just going to keep a history going underneath that. I don't know of a way to clear out the activity feed so that you can check items off like that. That being said, Office 365 has a really great tool for that. It's called To Do. It's a personal productivity tool. It's mobile and web friendly, and you can create to-do items, and you can use that as your checkoff. And if I'm not mistaken, you can add to-do as a tab inside of a channel, and you can check off your items from there.
I mean, it has where you can, it has filters and stuff, so you can use
Yeah.
the filters. It's just.
Not being able to delete the items.
Yeah, because I'm terrible about not deleting stuff, but I know that like my husband loves to delete everything, and so
It's funny, I've got two friends that work for Microsoft, and one of them's a zero inbox guy, and his girlfriend is a I don't care about it person, and so her inbox has like 12,000 plus items in it, and if he gets like crazy. And he looks at her email and he gets the shakes, and they have conversations on Twitter about this all the time.
Opposites attract.
Right, we got a few more things in the checklist I want to make sure that we get through. So I'll show you some integration with some of the other products that help us with the productivity in a moment. The next couple of things that I want to do, I'll come back to add a tab in a moment. I want to talk about membership, working with the membership within the team. So I want to show you that. I think one of the things that I really like about Teams is that I can control most of what I need right from Teams. I don't have to go to an admin center in Office 365. Only occasionally. I can do most of what I need right from the Teams client, and that's actually by design. They want to keep some of the IT pro overhead on this minimal. So if I need to adjust my team at all, I simply go into the team, and I can manage the team right from here. And that takes me to the settings menu. It's kind of the same thing as going up to the top, just two different places to do everything. So I can maintain my members from here. I can see my owners, I can see my visitors, I can see my owners, I can see my members, and I can see my guests. Now, with a member, like student 9, I can promote him to an owner. So I can make him an owner of the team, and then he can help me manage the team. Guests, on the other hand, right now, they can only be members. And that limits them from doing things like settings and adding in additional users and working with the channels and so forth. So they're just able to work with that content from there. I can add in members quickly and easily right from here. And once they're added, I can pick and choose the level membership that I'm going to give them, and it'll add them right into the list. In addition, you can search, so when the list gets really long, you get your search feature there. Now, since we're here in this particular area, I'll just touch base on a couple other things settings-wise. I can view my channels from here, so I can see any channel that's actually been created. I can choose whether to show for me or show for members. In addition, I can delete the channel. I can add connectors into the channel. I can edit the channel. Maybe I want to change like the display name or the description. I can get a link to the channel, so I can share this link and then redirect the user right into the channel. And then this one, a little interesting, this last one, get email address.
I love the get email address in the little T. SharePoint, that was one of my favorite things was the email address for being able to do interactions.
So allows you, for the recording so everybody can hear, we're mentioning up in the front about liking the ability to email directly into a SharePoint site. Office 365 groups allows us to do the same thing. It's just we don't have to create that team mailbox application that we used to have to in the little team SharePoint sites. With the Office 365 group, there's a shared mailbox that the group can access, and if you're a member of the group, you can view all the content there, and you can actually respond, and there's a dedicated email address to do that. This just takes that to one more step. Not only can we have that shared mailbox, but we can actually send email directly into the channel if we need to. So I'm going to take this email address and I'm going to send a message to the channel.
So can I tell the ways that I used it in the little T, and we can see if that all still works in the big T. So I would have an email so that meetings, I could go and copy the email, and it would go, and there would be a calendar where all of the meetings for the team would be on the calendar, and then in the SharePoint it could show the team calendar that would show all of the meetings that were scheduled for the team. Does do that?
It can, but there's some other things in Office 365 that I think have kind of updated that just a little bit. For example, there's one off the top of my head. There's an app, a Power App, that actually combines Exchange with like OneNote and with tools like Planner. It gives you one application to launch like meeting information. It'll send out all the meeting notes and the schedule for you with all the attendees. You use a OneNote notebook to take all of the meeting notes, and you can capture pictures and images and everything. At the end of the meeting, a couple of check boxes, and you can automatically send and push all that information out to everyone. But it's also saved in a SharePoint site.
Yeah, I would use that too. But this was just so that I could go and look at a month's thing and see during the month what are the vacations, what are all the meetings that are scheduled for the team, what does everything look like for the month.
Right. So with the Office 365 group, that shared calendar that you get there, you can do the same thing. It just extends it beyond SharePoint, so you can see it from a lot of different places.
Right, because I would do the calendar integration.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be like to send in emails to the group, and then it would create that inside of SharePoint so that it would have it in the document. Sorry to be.
No, that's
But
great
the
use case.
email was just one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So that was-
Yeah. So they've upgraded. They got a new suit. They got a new Iron Man suit. They've upgraded. Question?
Since student 9 is now an owner, can he throw you out of the group?
That's a good question. Can student 9 throw me out of the group? So let's sign out student 1 real quick, and let's sign in as student 9.
I thought the password was Iron Man.
It's actually War Machine Rocks. I'll have to come back to that one in a minute. I got to update the password for that user account, but I will test that before we leave, and we'll see if student 9 can throw me out or not. All right, going back to the email, I did get the email. It did launch, and notice it gave the whole email address and everything, and I even attached a document to it, and it went ahead and attached the document for me. So there's the document. So let's go to the SharePoint site for just a second. Created a new subfolder, email messages. it actually uploaded the email message and it uploaded the document that I attached as a file there. So it did email both of those into the channel. So we can receive incoming email and capture everything. Question?
What's the use for, under the channel settings where it says show me, or show members? Why would you not, what happens if you don't show the channel to members?
Where, or?
Go to where you can see the channels, the settings for the channels. See there. Manage channels there.
Show for me?
So there's show for me and then there's show for members.
Gotcha.
When would you uncheck show for members?
So it's kind of a security by obscurity. It's just removing it from the default view. It's just removing it from the left nav right over there. But it's not
But they
actually
can still
removing
get
it.
to it.
They can still get to it, yes.
Okay.
It's just removing it from the view. Yeah, it's not privatizing it. It's not security trimming it. It's just security by obscurity.
Right,
I'm not-
clarify
I'm
that,
not
ask
seeing
question.
that you just put in there.
What's that?
I'm not seeing what you just emailed.
The document, or are you underneath the Learn MS Teams channel? Should be underneath conversations and Learn MS Teams.
Oh, underneath the line. Okay.
All right, so did a little bit with the users. I went ahead and did the email, the share file. I'll come back to that one in just a second. All right, so we had some questions a few minutes ago about things like meetings. So I'm going to show some of that now. This is, I think, some of my favorite things to actually demo as part of this is the ability to meet now, whether I'm in a one-to-one or a private chat or group chat, or whether I'm in a public chat. I can also schedule a meeting off of that. I'll show you how all that comes together. So I'm going to go back to my general channel right here. All right, so I've added some users, different members to the team. Now we can go in, we can start conversations, we can start replies, pretty much right from here. But I have the ability within a conversation to go ahead and meet now. So I can watch that, and it's going to go ahead and ask me,
Wow.
do I want to add a subject?
Camera going out.
So I'm going to test meet now. I can go ahead and turn my video on, or I can schedule a meeting right from here. So let me zoom in so everybody can see it. It's already giving me a preview of the video, asking me for the subject. There's your on-off, and there's your scheduled meeting. Well, I'm going to go ahead and meet now. So let me zoom back out.
Now, do you have an option about recording it or not recording it?
So the question up here in the front is, do you have an option to record? Yes. And so I'll show you a few different things related to that. So it's telling me my audio is muted, so let me make sure that's good. All right, so I'm in the meeting already. Here I am. Audio, video, pretty much ready to go. So if there's somebody else out there in the general channel and you want to join in, feel free to do so. I'll continue demoing from here. Now, I'm in the meeting. I can invite other people. So now I got another person coming into the meeting, but I can invite different people, and it'll handle some of the presentation for me. So we got different people actually logging in.
Nice.
See, it's pretty serious.
Got him off guard.
So we got 3 different video feeds going, and I think overall we're pretty clear, and we're on a guest network here, the Microsoft campus. Now we can communicate through here. Another video coming in. Now we got 4 video feeds, pretty neat, and again, pretty clear video overall. Well, we just went a little fuzzy, but as we're working with this, I'm here in the video. I'm going to blur my background.
Is this a bearded team?
This is the bearded team. No, I went ahead and blur my background. You might not be able to see it on the video, but it does background blur. You all can blur your background as well. That's a default feature just underneath the ellipsis, which is pretty neat. And it actually works pretty well. You can kind of move around a little bit, and it'll actually kind of stick with you. So that video of the poor gentleman that was being interviewed on the news and his kids come flying in the room, you know, you might not see some of that. And they did announce a couple of weeks ago that they're going to do like backgrounds. So you can have like a brick wall behind you, or you could have, you know, a scenic background behind you. They did announce that. So you can do blurred backgrounds. The other question we had, with meetings, can you record? Yes, I could start a recording right now. It's going to save that video to Stream. Are you familiar with Stream? A couple of you are. So while this is running, let me just briefly touch base on Stream. I love Stream. I think it's pretty amazing. So Stream's my video portal in Office 365. Allows me to capture video. Allows me to publish those videos out. Now, I think one of the things that I really like about Stream is that I can create channels, public or private. I can show the videos on the SharePoint page whenever I want. I can go back and view the videos whenever I need. This is me at SharePoint Fest last year. But the thing that for me is the coolest about Stream, not only can I create videos, but it will take my audio and convert that to a text file that's searchable. It'll use that as closed captioning in my video. So if I do a meeting inside of Teams and I record it, it saves it to Stream. It auto translates it for me, gives me the closed caption file. I can edit it if I need to, but I can also search the transcript. So somebody said something at a meeting that we had inside of Teams, I could go back into Teams and search the transcript, and I can actually find that where they said it at that particular point in time and go right to
And
it.
that also helps for people with accessibility.
Yes. So it does help with accessibility reasons or access as well, which is pretty amazing.
So you said this has the intelligence to redirect to share or to Skype for Business if the recipient doesn't have Teams.
Yes.
Does that also get pulled back into here?
So the question is, if you start a meeting with somebody, does it have the intelligence to redirect to Skype for Business if they don't have Teams? And the follow-up to that is, does it also record the video and save it to Stream? I'm not sure on that one. I haven't done that yet. I will find an answer out to that. I haven't thought about that. But it does have the intelligence to redirect to Skype for Business and use that as the client. I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. It probably doesn't record because it's going to redirect me to Skype for Business to communicate. But I'll follow up and find out for sure.
How would it communicate to WebEx?
So the question is, will it communicate to WebEx? Not that I'm aware of. I have heard that some of those tools are creating plugins to allow some of that integration, but I haven't seen anything around it.
Yeah, because currently there's a plug-in for Outlook for WebEx.
Yeah, and to my knowledge right now, I don't know of anything allowing WebEx to connect to this yet.
What about the Webex Teams app?
I'm not 100%, I'll be honest with you. I haven't used WebEx in a couple of years. My company switched over to Zoom, and we've been using Zoom for a little while, and as soon as I can get them on Teams, I'm going to try to abandon Zoom. All right, so the recordings, it will capture that. We'll put it in Stream. It will do the auto transcription, which is pretty cool. So you can do the recording pretty much at any time. You got your background blurred into it. Another neat thing about the team is while I'm actually in the team, if somebody wants to join back in, so I have a couple people, but another neat thing about the team while I'm meeting is I can still do other things while continuing the meeting. So here's what I mean by that. If I need to chat, we can chat right from here. So I can see the channel that we just came from. So I can communicate right from here, and you can chat with that. But the chat history is persistent. So if you went back to the actual team, like see, I minimized it, and I'm back over here, and so I'm back in the channel. I can go back and I can view everything. There's my conversation, and it records it back to the channel. I don't know if you've ever done co-authoring in Office Online or Office, and the Skype channel pops up and you can chat, but as soon as you close it, you lose it. Well, here it's persistent. Here it stays with you. So I can chat inside of here, have that conversation right over here. Now, in addition, I can share content. So I can share my desktop, I can share different windows, but I can also share recent content. I can even share a whiteboard using Microsoft Whiteboard or the freehand tool from Envision. So I can share content right from here, and we can work on that content from the client. So like if I wanted to share my PowerPoint, it'll open it here, it'll only take a moment. I see everybody down at the bottom, and now you can scroll through the PowerPoint presentation. I could also prevent you from scrolling through the PowerPoint presentation. So we just hover over that, see if the message will pop back up. Prevent participants from moving through the shared presentation on their own. I can stop that and force you to do it at my pace. Otherwise, you can scroll through it on your own. Or I can scroll through it for you. Question?
It doesn't look like it tells you it doesn't record who's in the meeting.
I'm
In other
sorry.
words, it doesn't tell you who joined,
Oh, who joined the meeting?
or does it? And I'm just not seeing it.
That's a good question. I don't know. I have to go back and look at that. As I'm watching the screen, I see who's joining in, but yeah, I don't know that if it records who joined and when it actually did that. I can see the business case for that though. All right. So there's the presentation. I'll just stop. And hopefully you can see everything that's actually happening in there. We're having a video conversation with a chat while sharing content, while doing background blurring, while doing screen recording. Like, I don't know that I really need much more in my application, but I've done all of that from one application.
Well, when you hovered over, you said seeing that Thornburg was, you had a name with a picture. So now you can know that way.
Oh yeah, whenever the user's there, yeah. Now there's another feature. When we co-author a document, as you move your mouse cursor, it gives me a little tag, and I can see your name and your mouse cursor as you're moving around, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to exit out of the meeting. It'll leave, and then it'll ask me about the call quality. But you can see there's a join link that it added to the channel because I've launched this from the channel. Other people can join in that are members of that particular team or that channel, and they can see that. But I could also go into my chat, and from my chat, I could meet right from there. So I can start talking to someone, find a contact, favorite, whatever, and I can chat right from there. And then I can start a meeting right from there. Just launch it right from my private chat. So there are two different ways to do it, but I do caution when you do the channel meeting like that, anybody that has access to the team can technically join in. So just kind of be careful where you start it. The other option is when you want to meet, you can go right into the calendar and you can schedule a meeting from there. And you can set up a meeting time and then you can join in and you can run it from there and it'll publish that out through Exchange. But that leads me to one other thing that I want to make sure that I kind of touch base on that I think is really important related to meeting. I can do a meeting or I can do a live event. Anybody familiar with a live event? A couple of you? For those of you who aren't familiar with live events, a live event allows me from Teams to start a meeting but to broadcast it to basically my entire company. So I can do kind of a executive meeting started in Teams, and we could broadcast it in Stream. We could broadcast it in Teams, like an org-wide channel, or I could broadcast it in Yammer. I could also record the presentation inside of Stream and make it available in Stream or in my Sharepoint site. Now they just went live with this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I've been testing it kind of internally. It's really, really cool. It allows me to set up roles, producers and presenters. Producer, I get a split screen. I can queue up the next video while the presentation is live. When I need to switch over, I can seamlessly switch between presenters and then queue up the next presenter that I want. So it gives me full production quality for watching an actual live event, making sure everything's queued up and there's no issues with sharing before it even goes. In addition, wherever the video is being streamed, whether it's in Teams, you have the channel underneath that, or the conversation. People can have a conversation in real time while the presentation's going on. And we can have moderators step in and reply to those questions. If it's broadcast in Yammer, the Yammer conversation lives on underneath it, and people can conversate in real time directly underneath that, and we can go back and reference that a little bit later. But I can schedule live events inside of Teams, and Teams is kind of the tool that launches all of it. I can do a live event in Teams and broadcast to the rest of my organization, and they might not have the Teams application. They might just see it inside of Yammer. So my organization is like 65,000 people, and I don't want to deal with the headache of setting it up for everyone. I just tell them, go to Yammer. We're going to start, and we launch it from Teams, and then publish this to Yammer. So live events are really, really cool. All right, going back to my checklist. We did the meet now option. I briefly mentioned the schedule a meeting. For the sake of time, I just want to make sure we hit everything. Starting a private chat and a group chat, I think that one's fairly self-explanatory. The mobile app, I'll come back to that. So that's most of the checklist. Now there's a couple other things to touch base on. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint for just a few minutes. Architecture of the current environment. So we've already established that this is built on top of Office 365. So we want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of Office 365, and this is powered by the cloud. So there are some things that you need in order to actually make this function. There's a checklist that's part of this. So if anybody wants a copy of the slide deck, just let me know and I'll share that out through the group or whatever. But just kind of going through a couple of slides, there are some Exchange requirements. So you do need Exchange for a couple of things. If you want to work with like user profiles and pictures and configuration connectors, you do need some of that. SharePoint. If you want to store files, SharePoint Online is a requirement for it. I'm not sure how that fits into the hybrid scenario. I'll be honest, I haven't done a whole lot of research on that, so I'll find out. But if you don't have SharePoint Online enabled, they're only going to be able to chat and communicate. They're not going to be able to share any files inside of there and do the collaboration. Now with that, where's the chat information stored? It's an Exchange. So if you need to do any kind of auditing or e-discovery, the chat files will actually be inside of Exchange. And in private chat, without SharePoint Online, you're not going to be able to work with OneDrive for Business files either, because those two are pretty much intertwined in SharePoint Online. The Office 365 group is going to be the back end of it, so you have to have the group, and they're actually going to simplify the group. When you create an Office 365 group, you get owners, members, and visitors. Those are the defaults that are there. But did you see anything about visitors when I was adding or adjusting the permissions for user 9 just a moment ago? It was members and owners. They really simplified it inside of Teams. That being said, you have the SharePoint site on the back end. You can go in and there's permissions that you can apply on top of that. It won't extend to the SharePoint or to the Teams client. So the Office 365 groups. This is going back to kind of a question we had earlier. This is a custom slide that I added in. This just allows me, and I've said this many times, to create one permission model and have it extend across a couple of different objects. I like to visualize it. ShareGate did an updated version of the SharePoint Will a couple of years ago. Ben from ShareGates did this whole blog article with SharePoint being carved up for parts, and this is when people thought SharePoint was dying. And they created this will. And I like the model of the will. There's a periodic table out there right now by Matt Wade that's pretty cool, but I still kind of go back to the will. When I think about Office 365 groups, the group encapsulates pretty much everything that I see there. SharePoint for file storage, Office Online for working with those files, Outlook for the shared calendar and the shared mailbox. And so it extends the permission model kind of across that entire ecosystem. So where you start is what you get from Office 365 groups. So if I started by just creating an Office 365 group, I get Mail, Calendar, SharePoint, OneNote, and Planner. If I have a Power BI license, I can tie that into it. So if I took a little t site and groupified it, it would give me these things. The SharePoint site would get the Office 365 groups. It would create the mailbox and the calendar, add the OneNote notebook, and then give me the Planner plan. But if I start from Teams, it's going to give me Teams as my chat-based client. And depending on whether I had an Office 365 group enabled previously, it may or may not give me the shared mailbox and the shared calendar. Because Teams is the communication tool, and that adding in the email component is kind of optional along with that. So if I took a groupified site and I turned it into a Teams site, a big T site, I might have the shared mailbox and the calendar there. Otherwise, it might not be something that's there, depending on how I create the team. But these are usually the things that you get as part of the Office 365, or the Microsoft team. And if you start from Yammer, you miss out on the shared mailbox, calendar, and the Teams component. So you can start from Yammer and create an Office 365 group if you want, and that's kind of for an outer loop application. All right, I've already talked about the groups. Just going to double check my slides here. So there are a lot of questions as we're kind of migrating into Teams and we're moving away from like Skype for Business. People want to know, is Skype for Business going away? No, not anytime soon. There is interoperability between Teams and Skype. For example, if I try to chat with someone from Teams and they're on Skype, it'll work. I can see their replies back in Teams. But if I try to start a meeting with somebody and they're in Skype, it'll kick me to Skype in order to do the meeting and then close and return me back to Teams afterward. There's also a lot of companies that are kind of concerned. They spend a lot on phone-based systems around Skype for Business, and they want to know kind of what the future of that is. Microsoft announced a few months ago that basically Teams has all the functionality of Skype, but some companies are reluctant to move off of it because of the development that they've done on some of the Skype stuff. That development, I don't think translates one-to-one into Teams yet, but they're opening up the API for some of that custom development, so I think it's only a matter of time. And I'm just kind of speculating. That is definitely not my area of expertise, I'll be honest. All right, so I already mentioned that. I want to make sure we hit all the important parts. Just a second. Licensing. So this is one, just kind of a high-level overview. I don't know that anybody's really an expert on SharePoint licensing. I do not claim to be whatsoever. I think sometimes when you call them, they're just throwing darts at a dartboard and whatever lands on is what they recommend for licensing.
Isn't it an oxymoron when you say Microsoft will license?
So as far as licensing is concerned, I mean, most of the SKUs have Teams built into it. So basically E3, E5, all of those, you're going to have the SKU built into it, but they even have a free version of Teams with some limited features inside of it. So pretty much the licensing is out there. They do guest access now. When Teams was first released, guest access wasn't really allowed. They do have guest access built into it now. So I think most licensing is actually going to be covered, but we can turn it on or off. Healthcare client I work with, basically it's turned off right now for most of the users. They're doing a small rollout incrementally across more of the seasoned teams, and then they'll build up into a worldwide release. But our admins can actually turn it on or off if they need to, based off of your license. All right, last couple of bits that I really want to cover, and then I'm going to leave some time at the end for some Q&A on organizing teams. And I think this is where you really start to get some of the governance and the application and some of the best practices. Now, one of the things that I heard recently that I think is really spot on is getting users to adopt teams. Getting users to think about a new way of communicating and collaborating with one another. And one of the things that they've seen a lot of success in is users aren't going to give up Outlook. You're going to have to pry it from their cold, dead hands. So we're not going to try and get them to give up Outlook. But one of the ways that you can drive user adoptions in Teams is to get them to use Teams for meetings. You can send the invite to Outlook. They can watch it from Outlook, and it'll open up Teams, and they can have the meeting there. When they see the meeting experience in Teams, the video quality, the ability to chat, the ability to quickly share content, to blur their background, they're usually wowed by that because it's a step up over the experience they've had with previous tools like maybe Skype for Business. So that's one of the things that I think is really helpful for driving adoption inside of this. So we can tie that into kind of organizing teams. So when we're moving into this, don't say email is going away, don't email anymore. Say, let's just use this tool to have our next meeting. And then provide a collaborative experience from there. But we need to make sure that we have the team set up and it's ready to go for them. So that means creating the team, creating the channels that we might want to use with that, and then going ahead and adding those users inside of it. Now, you're going to have the general channel that's already there, but you can extend that channel with things like your tabs, connectors, and bots, so you can place in information that they might want already. So one of the things that I might do is if I'm going to have a meeting inside of a channel, I might create the channel. I might go ahead and add everybody into it, and then I'll do things like in the tabs, add like meeting notes, related documents, and then other information right there inside of the tabs, so that when they're in the channel, they get everything that they need. They can go in, they can meet, and then we can, hey, here's your files, you can continue to work from here. You got to trick them into continuing to use it. There are essentially 3 roles in this. There's no visitor, but there is guest. And we've seen guest that identifies with the brackets, and it tells you that that is clearly a guest. There's also an identifier on your team itself, and it'll tell you there are guests present inside of that team. So whenever you're working with it, you will get that identifier. But for users, when they're in a team, it's 2 roles, owners and members. Owners can work with the membership that's already there. They can work with invitations. We're going to find out if student 9 can kick me out in a few minutes because I was the one that created the team. Members are going to be invited to join, and they can work with the channels and the content that's there, and they can add content to it. But guest is going to be limited. You have to turn on guest access at the tenant level first, and then you're going to be able to do some of that inside of the team. Anybody know Daniel Glenn from Nashville, Microsoft MVP? Right. So Daniel's, he does a lot with Office 365. He's a good friend of mine. Daniel actually did a blog article like a year ago. There's like 4 different places you have to enable external and guest access in Office 365. He documented all of them. So if you're trying to do this and guest access isn't working, find Daniel Glenn. You might him on Twitter, and he did a pretty good blog article on that. I'm going to skip over that. So these are some of the things that you can do with the membership, whether you're an owner or you're a member. So notice that if you're an owner, you can create the team and you can edit the team.
So,
But if you're a member, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yes, though, even though you added us like members, because we were actually guests, because we couldn't add
Yeah.
tabs.
No, I didn't add you as like actual licensed users in my Office 365. Yeah. So guests are limited with some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can work with what I published out there. But this kind of breaks down what an owner can do versus what a member can do versus what a guest can do. And I think I actually need to make sure that this is updated. I think a couple of things have changed here recently with that. This is what Microsoft recommends, and I've seen a lot of success with this, and I try to emulate this whenever I try to implement and roll out Teams.
Can you do a screenshot of that for the changes?
There you go.
Thanks.
All right. So this is kind of what they recommend, envision, onboard, and then drive value. So with this, you're going to start small. You're not going to roll this out org-wide. Start in a small group. I definitely recommend groups that are a little bit more tech savvy. So maybe your IT pros start to roll it out from there. You're going to want to get champions and early adopters involved early on with this, because rolling it out is definitely a culture shift. One of the things that we do with Teams is we eventually start to rely less on things like email for communication, especially like within the team that we're working on. We're using more of a chat-based tool inside of Teams. So there's going to be fewer things like email that we're going to be communicating with, and that's a pretty significant culture shift. Some users, as I mentioned before, do not want to give up on tools like Outlook. So getting them to onboard, doing something like having a meeting inside of Teams and then chatting could be kind of a slow process to work with. So we're going to need our champions and early adopters with this. These are the people that embrace it, they want to use it. So my recommendation is, yes, if they come to me and they're interested in Teams, even if we haven't fully released it to the org, I might let them go ahead and start a pilot within their group, get some feedback from them, and then have them help me champion the product moving forward. You want to prioritize some business scenarios. There's a slide coming up that recommends a couple of different use cases. I think for me, the one that really hits home is project management. I see a lot of value in this for project management because I can create a tab in Teams for a planner and have a whole planner schedule built into it. I can create a document library for all the project artifacts that we might need to work with. I can create lists for issues, risk, and deliverables related to that project, and I can get you in Microsoft Teams, and here's a channel for this particular project, and here's tabs for all of that content, and it's all in one place. So you don't have to move around in order to find that. So I really like that model. The help desk for like an IT support team is also a really good starting case or a business scenario. Tying in Yammer is kind of an outer loop tool for people to submit issues, and we can open up tickets around it using a team channel to assign people to that, maybe adding a tab for planner so we can open up issues and risk, or open up issues and assign it to users. So the help desk scenario is another really good one that I've seen a lot of application around. So those are just two, but kind of pick and choose your own, and there's going to be a slide coming up that shows a couple more. Technical planning. Unfortunately, there is some things you have to do from an IT perspective, networking, to make sure that this is going to be up and running. They have a number of planning worksheets. They even have a couple of tools to help you do things like bandwidth calculation and so forth. You're going to run some pilots on this. The pilots are going to be with your champions and early adopters and some of your more tech-savvy teams. You're going to have them implement it, and you're going to get some lessons learned related to it. One of the things that I like using to gather that information is Teams. Create a channel around it or create a team around it and get feedback. You can create Microsoft Forms. You can use that to survey information right inside of the team channel. Just add it as a tab. You can create a wiki, or you can create like a window notebook. You can get your lessons learned inside of there and start building knowledge share around that. I also, as part of the onboarding process, I like creating a team to teach people how to use Teams. Kind of like we did here. If I were to do this as like a full hands-on workshop, I would have a whole list of things that I want you to do. And I'm going to have you do that in Teams, but I'm going to load my PowerPoint in Teams. I'm going to teach it to you from Teams, and I'm going to have you fully interact in Teams. And that can really help drive user adoption. And then you just go back and measure, manage, and you drive the adoption from there. So do your lessons learned, pay attention to your users, and then you can implement it. Now moving forward, let me just find the slide real quick. So you go to the Microsoft Teams website, you can go to Fast Track and you can find it, or you can go to like teams.microsoft.com. They have different case studies for a number of different scenarios. There's 7 that they push out there right now. And it's kind of a detailed case study about how different business units would implement this. And it covers things from marketing to sales to HR to customer support and so forth. So you can use this as kind of a guide to how you might implement it and start rolling it out along your organization. In addition, within each of these scenarios, they have some documentation and they have some content that you can take away with you that's really helpful. One of the things that I really like that's part of that I really like this. They put a lot of work into this. If you've never seen it, it's the Microsoft Teams Adoption Guide. It's a flip book. Just available at teamworktools.azurewebsites.net. I'll make sure anybody who needs the link to this gets it. But this is a really cool tool. It's a visual guide you can walk through. It's only 12 pages long, but it has those business scenarios actually built into it. So as you scroll through, it's interactive. So there are things like a day in the life. And that's actually a visual guide. So kind of walks through like how you would roll this out over the course of a single day. So if you wanted to do a workshop, Teams in a day, they have kind of a guide and some of the different things that you kind of need to hit all along the way. That's all in the flip book. But everything in the flip book is actually a standalone document, so you can download these standalone documents and you can do that as an adoption guide. The flip book's just a great way to start that. So between like the guide there and the business cases, they have a lot of information that can help you to start rolling this out and to apply to certain business models or different teams that you want to work with. All right. Outside of that, that's pretty much all I want, or all I have time to cover. I'll make sure you get the slide deck for anybody that wants that. I know we're kind of close to the end of time here, but we've had a number of good questions throughout. I'm going to stick around and take questions as long as you have questions or until they kick me out of the building. But I'll leave a little bit of time here at the end. I just ask one thing. If you are a guest in my team, please don't spoil Avengers Endgame for me, and don't do it on Twitter either. I'm going to filter for the next 10 days or so. But with that, I'll open it up for Q&A.
How do you register again for the Sharepoint event, August 10th?
That's a good question. We haven't done the official registration site yet, but we'll announce it on Meetup initially. So just go to Meetup, and you're going to look for the Charlotte area Sharepoint user group. So we'll announce it here, Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group for the Charlotte SharePoint and Office 365 Saturday. We'll make the announcement here, but we'll probably do our actual registration through Eventbrite. We'll announce it here, give the link to Eventbrite. We like using Eventbrite because they give us a little bit more control over tickets and working with some other systems. But we'll start off here. We'll make the announcement when registration's open, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, there's a website that we'll link to as well. SBS events. And so when we start making updates, we'll actually be on SBS events, and we'll release our speaker list there. And then we'll provide a link for Meetup to get back to this, so you can see the speakers and you can see the sessions and everything that's going to be there. But Meetup's the place you want to start. And as we make announcements, we'll publish them on Meetup first, and then give you all the links you need to redirect. Yes.
Channels, if you did them for project management, you completed the project. If you delete the channel, everything's gone.
So question here, going back to Teams. Let's say you did a scenario in Teams for project management, and you decide you don't need the channel anymore, and you delete the channel. What happens to the content? It does delete the channel, it does delete the content, but the content still lives on the SharePoint document library in the subfolder that it's associated with.
So it's left back there, even though this put it in there.
The conversation, the chat and everything will be in Exchange, and then the content will still be in the SharePoint document library. My understanding is both can be restored. So you can delete it, and we can restore both after the fact.
Who's we? Make sure I didn't have to call,
The Wiki.
half hours.
Other questions?
Just a comment on that. So you could actually just take the move from the views and we get out of there in space, but it's just in the background.
Yeah, you can just remove it from the visibility. Yep. There's a question back there. Yep.
Do you think this is going to be somewhat of a replacement down the line for Skype for Business?
So the question is Teams going to be a replacement for Skype for Business down the line? I think at some point, yes. I think they're going to take everything they know about Skype for Business, fully roll that into Teams, and they're going to push Teams down the road. Will that happen anytime soon? No, I don't think so. But I think eventually, yes, it is going to happen. Just to kind of expand on that a little bit, Microsoft's released products every so often that have been really game changers in like the enterprise. This is one of them. The impact that they've had with this has been overwhelmingly positive, and organizations that have adopted it have really, really embraced it, and they've seen a lot of change based off of that. So they've got a lot invested in this. I don't know if you pay attention to kind of their marketing, and you get on, you go to any conference, it doesn't matter what Office product that's there, they're going to mention Teams on top of that. The Teams team at Microsoft that they've got developing this is huge. The rate of feature updates and integration is significant. They are full sail behind this because this is very much a game changer as far as collaboration in the enterprise space. So this is one. SharePoint's another one I can think of off the top of my head that was really a game changer. This one's there as well.